Welcome back. It's Sunday. It's been a month. I've been on the shelf, but I'm back. Welcome back to the drama-free true crime destination known as Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. So good to be back with you. Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw here, and like I have always before my little month delay. I have a lot to cover this evening, and a lot of it has to do with the Diddy case. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover everything else before I even get to Diddy because there's so much to cover. So, here's what I'm going to do first of all. First off, let me do a little house cleaning because I need to get this out of the way and get it over with. First of all, if you're joining me for the first time within that month span, I thank you. I appreciate your support. I appreciate all the love. If you're joining us, I want to say thank you again. Please make sure to drop that like, share, subscribe, drop me a comment. I'm at support Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. It's a free way to support the channel. I appreciate that as well. If you would like to help support me financially, which is the reason why I was off for that month and I didn't have it, you can hit me up via PayPal. PayPal me EKB316 or on Cash App $ EKB316. Nothing is obligated, but it's always appreciated. Um, if you're showing up here and you have a brand new link, if you want to join me and join me live, all you gotta do is follow that link, and I'll be more than happy to have you as an extra voice here. All right. Also, if you want to get in contact with me, I've got ways to go through it. You can hit me up on Facebook. Facebook Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. On X, formerly known as Twitter, at EKB316, all caps. Right here on YouTube, at Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. On Instagram, at EKB316, all lowercase. On TikTok, and I'll be sure to post a link to this there as well. Well, that's going to be on TikTok at King of Hearts 316 2021. And you can email me, kingofhearts316_09 at outlook.com. Alright? Now that we got all that business out of the way, if you're ready, grab yourself a little something to eat, grab yourself a little something to drink. For the first time ever, this is time for my opening statement. Tonight I return, not with celebration, but with conviction. For weeks, we watched the wheels of justice grind slowly and publicly in the federal case against Sean Diddy Combs. Allegations of power abused, lives manipulated, and silenced and forced under threat have now reached their final act. The jury will deliberate. And if the scales of justice tip toward guilt, the conversation shifts. Not just legally, but culturally. What was once speculation branded under the hashtag "Did he do it?" becomes a stunning reckoning using the hashtag "Did he did what?" This isn't about cancel culture. It's about accountability culture. If a guilty verdict comes down, we won't ask why now. We'll ask, how did it go unchecked for so long? Once again, welcome back to Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. I'm not here to play. I'm here to unpack, challenge, and confront the headlines one truth at a time. With no gimmicks, no drama, and no BS. If you're ready, let's get to it. We start off with a case where the suspect is confessing to the murder of a beloved pastor and was planning a dozen more. This is out of New River, Arizona. About a week after Easter in April, Pastor Bill Schoenman was found killed in his New River home. In a jailhouse interview with Scripps News Phoenix, the suspect in the case confessed to the killing and said he planned to murder more than a dozen priests and pastors across several states. Pastor Bill Schoenman was a beloved New River pastor who led the New River Bible Chapel congregation for decades. The 76-year-old was found killed on April 28th, about a week after Easter, in his home. Pastor Bill was known for his visits to stores and businesses around town, and his love for vintage cars and planes. He also at one point had a mechanic shop here in the valley. We were just helping people all the time, and he was known for that, said his friend Dennis Roper in May. Pastor Bill has been described as a loving father and a man of service to his community. It is something that is hard to have context and perspective on if you're not in the middle of it, said Pastor Bill's son Randy Schoenman back in May. You know, every news story about somebody that is murdered, like that is somebody's father, somebody's sister, somebody's mother. 51-year-old Adam Schief spoke with Scripps News Phoenix through a jail-issued electronic device at the Coconino County Detention Facility. During the interview, he said he came to Arizona with a plan and targets. At the end of April, Schief said he was watching churches in the Valley area. People were unaware until New River pastor, 76-year-old Bill Schoenman, commonly known as Pastor Bill, was found dead in his home. Schief said he believed Christians were being led astray by pastors and priests. According to Schief's own words, his motive was fueled by his religious beliefs, claiming that Christianity was wrong and that the Bible should only be the Old Testament. Schief came to Arizona from California following his release from federal prison, stating that he didn't have money and was camping in the desert in the West Valley where he found his first target. Coming from California, he said much of his planning happened while he was camping here in Arizona. In a series of confessions, Schief said he originally had his eye on a different target in the West Valley, but selected Schoenman at random after seeing him in his New River community. Scripps News is not naming other potential targets that Schief references in the interview. On Easter Sunday, I followed him home, Schief said, about his first potential target. And then, when he pulled into his driveway, two women came out of the garage to greet him. He said his focus was on the religious leaders. He said he intended to start and end in Arizona, where he was baptized at a young age. Schief told ABC 15 his plans were across country, and his next stop after Arizona was Las Vegas, Nevada. He was going to put the 10 Commandments in order on each of the priests, said Schief. Schief provided a list of locations he intended to travel to, with Phoenix mentioned twice in the list. In Sedona, Schief claimed he had 2 targets. The list goes with Phoenix, Sedona, Las Vegas, Nevada, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Billings, Montana, Detroit, Michigan, New York City, Charlotte, North Carolina, Mobile, Alabama, Beaumont, Texas, El Paso, Texas, and return to Phoenix. Schief said he committed other crimes along the way, including stealing a car and breaking into homes. He denied wanting to take valuables. The only reason why I had to go into houses was for supplies, like things that I needed, said Schief. The 51-year-old also described gruesome details about the homicide of Schoenman. I just drove there like 2 in the morning, maybe, and parked, said Schief, and then I just went in there and did it. He confessed to crucifying Schoenman and said that was the plan with all of them. From New River, Sheep said his next target was a religious institution in Sedona. I was going to jump into the back of the car when the priest left service that Wednesday, he said. I went to get into the back of the car as he entered the car. I was going to tell him to drive to his house, and there was an old lady who got in my way. He told Scripps News Phoenix he loves God and is protective of him. Sheep also denied being part of any group with his beliefs. Sheep was ultimately arrested with the help of multiple agencies, including Sedona Police. The string of alleged felonies he's now charged with in Coconino County, helped lead law enforcement to the now self-proclaimed killer. Sheep said that days after his arrest, he wrote to the FBI confessing, sharing details that would only be known by the person who was at the crime scene. I told the FBI agent, look, I want the death sentence, Sheep said. I'll plead guilty right now on the spot. I want the death sentence, and I want the execution date right now. Sheep has a lengthy criminal history that already spans multiple states. At a recent press conference, Maricopa County Sheriff Jerry Sheridan described this as the most bizarre case he's seen in his decades with the agency. Officials named Sheep as the only suspect in Shulman's death. ABC 15 has been told that the Maricopa County Attorney's Office is reviewing the case. Sheep showed no remorse during the interview and did not apologize. Will God forgive me? Says Sheep. Of course. Of course he will forgive me. He's a loving God. He's a forgiving God. First of all, there's one thing I want to, there's a couple things I want to clear up, and I'm not trying to bring religion into this or anything like that. But, going with what I believe, God doesn't need our protection. And this is just based off of what I've been taught and what I believe. God doesn't need our protection. Why am I saying that? Simply put, he's God all by himself. We need his protection more than he needs ours, but I'm not trying to preach or anything. That's number one. Number two, if Chief really wants the death penalty, and he's claiming that he will do it, he wants to he'll plead guilty right there and then, and wants the execution date, I say give him what he wants. But one other thing I will disagree on him with, and I'm going to use his own logic against him. He said that God will forgive him. Not with that reprobate mind of his. Simply because if he wants to do what he's planning on doing to other pastors and other priests on his cross-country run, he's got to be sure that he hasn't committed any sins himself, like it says in the New Testament. In fact, these are the words of Jesus Christ when it was said, "Let he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone." That's all I got to say about that. Next up, we're going to go right into the Justice Serve file. Jason Levesque. He's sentenced for assault in the shooting of his neighbor. Rochester, New Hampshire. A New Hampshire man convicted of assault after shooting his neighbor was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison on Monday. In March, Jason Levesque was acquitted of attempted murder in the shooting of Kyle Violette. However, a jury convicted him of the lesser charge of first-degree assault. Prosecutors argued Levesque shot Violette 6 times during an altercation over snowplowing. Prosecutor Joaquin Barth told the jury that Violette's behavior was non-threatening when he approached Levesque unarmed on April 4, 2024. Defense attorney Mark Sissy argued Levesque thought he was in imminent danger, portraying Violette as unstable and out of control. Levesque testified at trial that he acted in self-defense, saying Violette had threatened him and his family more than once. In a statement read by a victim's advocate, Violette's daughter asked for a sentence that brings justice and relief to the family. Violette's girlfriend, Angela LaChance, said there has to be justice for Kyle because he deserves it. Victim Kyle Violette also gave an impact statement, saying he had no intentions of harming anyone that night, and Levesque tried to execute him in front of his family. Violette said, "I hope you send this man to a place where he will learn you don't get to pick who he lives next to." Violette also called Levesque a coward for his actions in front of their daughters, who witnessed the shooting. The prosecution asked for the maximum sentence for Levesque, saying the offense embodies multiple acts of violence. Barth also cited prior misdemeanor charges against Levesque. The defense argued that it was an isolated incident and out of character for Levesque, saying he did a terrible act, but he is not a terrible person. Sissy told the judge that Levesque asked him to request a sentence of 5 to 10 years, understanding the seriousness of the case. The judge sentenced Levesque to 10 to 20 years in prison, with 1 year of the minimum suspended. He can earn credit for up to 180 days of time served while incarcerated through the completion of specific programs. The judge cited Violette's horrific injuries and the harm to Violette and his family. The judge also said Levesque had numerous options when Violette turned and walked away. And I happen to agree with the judge on that. In fact, one of those options, when Violette walked away, so should Levesque. But that's not the route that Levesque took. Now, Levesque is going to take another route, straight to a prison cell for the next 10 to 20 years. Now that's justice. And speaking of the Justice Served file, let's add another one from Monday. Monica Sementilli was sentenced, and her now deceased husband Fabio's family is calling Monica sex crazed and demonic at sentencing. Los Angeles. Monica Sementilli was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the brutal murder of her husband, who was found stabbed to death at the couple's home in 2017. Sementilli was found guilty of murder and conspiracy in the murder for hire of celebrity hairstylist Fabio Sementilli. Jurors found Monica plotted with her lover, Robert Baker, to continue their affair and cashed in on Fabio's $1.6 million life insurance policy. While the sentence for first-degree murder is life in prison without parole, Judge Ronald Cohen had the option of sentencing Monica for the conspiracy charge in a range of 25 years to life. Judge Cohen gave her the maximum, saying he found that she was the mastermind of the conspiracy, noting that Baker did not have the intelligence to plan such a brutal, well-thought-out slaughter. Looking toward Monica's future, Fabio's youngest sister told the judge she had searched online for what happens in female prison. I read that inmates make sure newcomers get a brutal welcome, Morella Sementilli told the court. Disgusting food and poor hygiene. And I can't deny I like the sounds of that. With every holiday, I will grow more peace knowing Monica is eating food that even the rats don't want to eat. 8 members of Fabio's family spoke at Monica's sentencing, not missing words as they described Fabio's murder as a premeditated execution, carried out by cowards, driven by a woman with no soul. Stephanie Avola, Fabio's niece-in-law, referred to the defendant as a soul devoid of humanity and reminded Judge Cohen that prosecutors said Monica planned the murder so that her youngest daughter would find her husband's body. Only a devil could carry out something so calculated, so cruel, and so utterly heartless against her own child, Avola said. Let her be forgotten as the clump of nothingness she is. Fabio's sister Loretta Pisillo referred to Monica as sex-crazed and demonic. You had it all, Monica, and you threw it away. You burned it to the ground, Pisillo said. For what? Lust? Greed? Attention? There's a darkness living inside you that no mortal can understand your evil treason. You're rotten through and through. Monica's 2 daughters, whom she shared with Fabio, both spoke about their love for both of their parents. We're trying our best to move forward, Jessica Sementilli said. We've only had 5 months to grieve our father before we lost our mother too. I truly thought this trial would bring some kind of closure, that we'd be able to grieve together, the 3 of us, and begin healing. But instead, my sister and I will be doing what we've done the last 8 years. We're going to pick each other up, we're going to carry on, and we're going to stay strong. Christopher Austin, who pleaded guilty to stabbing Fabio with Baker, was sentenced to 16 years to life in prison when he was sentenced in May. Baker was sentenced to life in prison without parole after pleading no contest to the murder charges. I really have nothing else to add to that. Absolutely nothing. I think the judge's sentence was spot on. She planned it. She had an accomplice to carry it out. Accomplices, excuse me. She had accomplices to carry it out. It was carried out, and now we got one serving 16 to life, the other 2 serving life. Just like I said in the last case, that's justice. And as far as the rest of the Sementilli family goes, I pray to God that they find peace. Tuesday was the very short missing boyfriend murder trial, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But I want to bring to your attention a Wisconsin couple accused of trying to poison a man's ex-girlfriends. This is out of Dane County, Wisconsin. Look to the right hand side of this, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paul Doon and Andrea Whitaker. A Wisconsin man and his girlfriend are accused of trying to kill 2 of his ex-girlfriends with poison. Paul Van Doon and Andrea Whitaker are facing charges in multiple counties, including attempted first-degree intentional homicide, according to court records. A criminal complaint obtained by Court TV accuses the couple of breaking into the victims' vehicles and poisoning their water bottles with cyanide and thallium. Investigators say they tried to poison one victim identified in court documents as Rock Victim on 2 other occasions by placing a tote containing hydrogen sulfide in her vehicle and placing homemade Abrin in her vehicle's ventilation. The CDC describes Abrin as a natural poison that comes from the seeds of the rosary pea or Jequirity pea plant, similar to ricin. According to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, hydrogen sulfide is highly toxic and extremely flammable colorless gas known for its pungent, rotten egg odor at low concentrations. Van Doon was identified as a possible suspect after rock victim searched through her phone while hospitalized and remembered text messages she received from him after months of no contact that accused her of being evil. Rock victim told the detectives that she had casually dated Van Doon about 2 years ago, but the relationship ended when he met Whitaker. Van Doon had told Rock victim that Whitaker, a pharmacology student, was the one. In the text messages, Van Doon allegedly told Rock victim that Whitaker had killed herself after learning about his prior relationship with her and that she should rot in hell. Van Doon was arrested on June 15th when he was caught surveilling the home of Rock victim. The next day, Whitaker was arrested when she was caught removing evidence from Van Doon's home. Investigators said rosary pea seeds, a generator for hydrogen sulfide, and seeds used to make ricin were found at properties belonging to Van Doon. Searches related to poison and the victims were allegedly found on Whitaker's cell phone, according to the complaint. Whitaker is scheduled to be in court on July 2nd, this Wednesday, for a preliminary hearing. There is so much that could have been done that no, actually, there's so little that could have been done. All they had to do was just, if Whitaker was the one, leave the other victims alone. No need to make them victims. Just go on with your relationship with Whitaker. Now both of you are hung up on intentional homicide charges and what else? First degree intentional homicide. Attempted first degree intentional homicide. In multiple counties. That is what you call foolish. And in other foolish moves news, Karmelo Anthony is accused of murdering a teen at a Texas track meet. On this past Tuesday, he was indicted for that murder. McKinney, Texas. Take a look at the left side of your screen. This is Karmelo Anthony. A Texas teenager has been indicted for the murder of fellow student athlete whom he is accused of stabbing at a high school track meet. Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis announced Tuesday that a grand jury indicted Karmelo Anthony on charges of first-degree murder. Anthony was 17 when he allegedly stabbed 17-year-old Austin Metcalf on April 2nd, 2025 in Frisco. Investigators say the violent confrontation began when Metcalf asked Anthony to leave his school's tent at the track meet and escalated until Metcalf was stabbed in the chest. Willis said the community was shaken by the violent incident as he promised to work diligently on finding justice. From this point forward, we will continue doing our part, fully and fairly, to pursue justice under the law, Willis said in that statement. The trial schedule will be set by the court, but when the time comes, they'll be ready. Thousands of people have offered their support to both Metcalf's and Anthony's families in the wake of the stabbing. An online fundraiser to support Anthony's defense raised over $500,000. In a statement posted to Anthony's fundraising page, his family expressed gratitude to those who have supported them and asked for continued donations. Your support has reminded us that we are not alone. Your love has helped us stand in the face of heartbreak, threats, and misinformation. Now, as this legal process moves forward toward trial, we enter an even more intense phase, one that will demand everything from us emotionally, financially, and spiritually. The statement says the money donated will be used to cover essential and urgent needs that have arisen as a result of this tragic situation, which includes relocation for the family, transportation to and from court, and hiring attorneys and trauma counseling for the family. Anthony was released on a $250,000 bond after he was initially charged in April. Now, I've heard a great deal about this particular case, and I believe deep down it's all, every case seems like every case that I'm covering this evening, and a lot that I will cover in the future, it all stems the same way. It's all about choices. Choices we make could end up landing you as a defendant, as a victim, or nothing at all. That's all it really takes. Karmelo Anthony made the choice to stab his fellow student athlete. Now Austin is deceased, and Karmelo Anthony is an indicted defendant. On Wednesday, it's now official, Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson will stand trial in the murder of Crystal Rogers. Bowling Green, Kentucky. The trial of two men charged in the disappearance and murder of Crystal Rogers is underway. Opening statements were delivered Wednesday morning in the trial of Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson. On Tuesday, 12 jurors and 3 alternates were sworn in to hear the case. Houck, the father of Rogers' youngest child, is charged with complicity to murder and complicity to tampering with physical evidence. Prosecutors allege Houck enlisted Stephen and Joseph Lawson to help carry out Rogers' murder on July 3, 2015, the night she disappeared from the Houck family farm. All right, here's everybody involved in this particular trial. This is Crystal Rogers here, Joseph Lawson, and Brooks Houck. I've got all the hope in the world, but now I'm a single parent, it appears to me, Houck said shortly after Rogers' disappearance. Earlier this month, Stephen Lawson was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with evidence after admitting during his trial that he participated in abandoning Rogers' car on the Bluegrass Parkway. His son Joseph faces the same charges as he stands trial alongside Houck. While prosecutors have not publicly released a motive, Rogers' mother, Sherry Ballard, has consistently suspected Houck was involved in both her daughter's death and her husband Tommy's murder a year and a half later. Tommy Ballard was shot while hunting with his grandson. 100% I believe there's a connection. I believe the same people that murdered my daughter murdered my husband. I think they did that to get my husband out of the way so we couldn't search for my daughter anymore, Ballard said. Despite years of intensive searches at the Houck family farm and on Thompson Hill Road, while Stephen Lawson told detectives his son and another man were digging and burning near an abandoned trailer, Rogers' body has never been found. The trial may reveal new information about what happened to Rogers or provide details about prosecutors' claims that Houck's brother and mother were co-conspirators, though neither has been charged. And for this trial, there are no cameras allowed in the courtroom. And we have a story that's related to this. Is according to prosecutors in the trial, Crystal Rogers went on a surprise date before disappearing. Prosecutors say Crystal Rogers' boyfriend's own words and behaviors prove that he was behind her disappearance and murder. Brooks Houck is standing trial alongside former employee son Joseph Lawson on charges of complicity to commit murder and complicity to tampering with physical evidence. Rogers was dating Houck when she disappeared on July 3rd, 2015, and was last seen at his family farm. Rogers told her cousin before she disappeared that she was excited about a surprise date Houck had planned for July 3rd. Investigators believe Houck took Rogers to the farm under the guise of a date, but was planning all along to get rid of her. Prosecutors showed the jury Houck's police interview, conducted shortly after Rogers disappeared. A camera in the room picked up what a detective missed inside, that Houck pressed a recorder in his pocket once he walked in. Stranger still, Houck spent more than an hour writing a statement about his whereabouts on July 3rd and 4th, and then read it aloud to an empty room. Prosecutors told the jury that Houck was recording his statement to share with family members so they could keep their story straight. Houck's family is playing a central role in the trial, with prosecutors telling the jury in opening statements that Houck's mother asked someone to help her find someone to get rid of Crystal, and told others that Crystal wouldn't be around anymore. Prosecutors also noted that Houck's brother Nick Houck turned his cell phone off for 24 hours beginning July 3rd. Houck and Lawson have pleaded not guilty to the charges. Their defense says the prosecution's case is based on public pressure to resolve the case. Police couldn't find the answers they were looking for, so they focused on Houck, Houck's attorney said in the opening statement, where he also said the prosecution had manipulated and bullied witnesses in the case. The presiding judge in the case has banned cameras from the courtroom for the duration of the trial. Lawson's father, Stephen, was convicted in May on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with evidence in Rogers' case. Stephen's sentencing is scheduled for August 6th. So, now that we know that the cameras have been barred from the courtroom, we just have to wait as updates roll in in regard to the trial. And when I get it, you'll get it here first. But I wanna believe that one of these guys actually did the murder and tried to dispose of Crystal Rogers' body. But I'm just gonna have to wait until all that comes out. Next up, and this is a story right around near my neck of the woods. The sheriff is saying that there is no evidence that Travis Decker remains alive in the area. As you all know, Travis Decker is the man who killed his three daughters, ages 8, 9, and 5. Seattle, Washington. Here's this is the photo of Travis Decker before there were any updates about how he may have changed his look. Authorities have spent the last 3 weeks searching in the mountains of Washington state for an ex-soldier wanted in the deaths of his 3 young daughters. They're saying that there's no evidence that he remains in the area or that he is alive at all. 32-year-old Travis Decker has been wanted since June 2nd when a sheriff's deputy found his truck and the bodies of his three daughters, 9-year-old Peyton Decker, 8-year-old Evelyn Decker, and 5-year-old Olivia Decker at a campground outside Leavenworth. The discovery came 3 days after he failed to return the girls to their mother's home in Wenatchee, about 100 miles east of Seattle, following a scheduled visit. There is no certain evidence that Decker remains alive or in this area, the Cottinus County Sheriff's Office said in a social media post on Monday. Seemingly strong early leads gave way to less convincing proofs over the last 2 weeks of searching. Still, we can't and won't quit this search. Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia Decker deserve justice, and Decker remains a danger to the public as long as he's at large. The Post said resources were being shifted to focus on finding Decker's remains, if he died in the rugged wilderness during this intense search, a possibility that increases every day. Sheriff's Inspector Chris Wilson said this on Tuesday, that it includes the use of dogs trained to find human remains. Because of the remoteness of that country and some of the conditions that we've observed, it's clear the longer he stays out there, the longer anybody stays out there, the greater the chance that something's going to happen. And whether he intends it or not, that he's going to die, Whitson said. The U.S. Marshal Service is working to track down Decker if he managed to escape the region, the Sheriff's Office said, and extra patrols have been on duty. The killings occurred in neighboring Chelan County, but backcountry trails link the area to Kittitas and to the Pacific Crest Trail, which runs from Canada to Mexico. It would not be unprecedented for Decker to evade a search in the rugged, remote region for 3 weeks. The area is dotted with abandoned buildings, unoccupied vacation homes, caves, and former mines in which he might find shelter. In 2020, Jorge Alcantara Gonzalez, who was wanted in the killing of a turkey hunter, spent 23 days on the run in much of the same terrain. He was finally caught when someone called the police to report seeing someone in a cabin that should have been unoccupied. Authorities looking for Decker say they are similarly relying on tips from the public to help find him. They have asked people to be alert in the backcountry and to check surveillance or game cameras on their properties. Earlier this month, hikers in a popular Cascade Range backpacking area called the Enchantments reported seeing a lone person who appeared to be ill-prepared for the conditions and seemed to be avoiding others. A helicopter crew responded and spotted an off-trail hiker near an alpine lake. The person ran from sight as the helicopter passed, according to the Chelan County Sheriff's Office. Authorities later found the trail, and canine teams tracked the person to the area of the Ingalls Creek trailhead south of Leavenworth before the trail went cold. We still believe public awareness and help is our best tool. When it comes from a cabin owner who finds something out of place, a hiker in the Enchantments who discovers evidence our search is missed, or anyone else, the Sheriff's Office said. Decker was an infantryman in the Army from March 2013 to July 2021 and deployed to Afghanistan for 4 months in 2014. He was training in navigation, survival, and other skills. Authorities have said this, and he once spent more than 2 months living in the backwoods off the grid. Last September, Decker's ex-wife, Whitney Decker, wrote in a petition to modify their parenting plan that his mental health issues had worsened and that he had become increasingly unstable. He was often living out of his truck, and she sought to restrict him from having overnight visits with their daughters until he found housing. An autopsy determined that the girl's cause of death to be suffocation. They had been bound with zip ties and had plastic bags placed over their heads. It's now 4 weeks into this search, guys, and there's still the belief that Decker is nowhere within the nowhere in the area, and more than likely he may not even be alive at all. An interview with CNN, and no, excuse me, I take that back, not CNN. An interview with News Nation, his ex-wife has been quoted as saying she wanted Decker found, quote, dead or alive. Make make that what you will. We have a Kohberger update. A former jail guard, a boxing gym, and a boxing gym owner have been called to testify for Bryan Kohberger. Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. A hearing next week in Pennsylvania will determine whether 6 people will have to travel to Idaho to testify as Bryan Kohberger stands trial for the murder of 4 college students. Kohberger is accused of murdering Madison Mogen, Xander Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, and Kaylee Gonsalves as they slept in their home near the University of Idaho campus in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022. Kohberger's murder trial is scheduled to begin with jury selection next month, though his attorneys are asking for a last-minute delay. 6 witnesses are scheduled to appear at a hearing on June 30th, tomorrow, after they were summoned to appear to testify in Kohberger's trial. The Monday hearing will determine whether there is cause for the witnesses to be compelled to travel. Among the witnesses subpoenaed is William Searfoss, a corrections officer at the Monroe County Jail where Kohberger was held after his arrest at his family's home in eastern Pennsylvania. Searfoss, who previously ran for East Stroudsburg School Board, told Pocono Record in 2007 that his job gives him unique insight and experience with issues such as violence, gang activity, and school security. Also called to the hearing are Anthony Soma, Ralph Vecchio, Ann Parham, Jesse Harris, and Brandon Andriola. Ann Parham, who says she's a retired teacher on social media, was one of Kohberger's academic advisors, according to the New York Post. Kohberger's former professor at DeSales University, Michelle Bolger, was initially scheduled to be included as a witness, but was replaced by Andriola. Andriola's social media accounts do not reveal any ties to the university. Harris owns a boxing gym in Pennsylvania where Fox News reported Kohberger worked out. Maggie Sanders, whose relationship to the case and Kohberger remains unclear, was initially scheduled to appear with the other witnesses, but her hearing has been delayed until July 7th. And for another update, the defense had requested to delay the trial, and the judge rejected it. So right now, the August court date is there, and we'll just have to wait and see what comes up next. Next up, Liver King arrested in Austin, Texas after threatening Joe Rogan. A disgraced social media influencer known as Liver King was arrested for allegedly threatening Joe Rogan. Brian Michael Johnson, age 47, was arrested on Tuesday by the Austin Police Department on a misdemeanor charge of terroristic threat, according to Travis County Jail records. In a series of videos posted to Johnson's Instagram account this week, Johnson appears to threaten Rogan repeatedly. In one video, Johnson says, "Rogan, I'm calling you out. My name's Liver King. Man to man, I'm picking a fight with you. I have training in jiu-jitsu. You're a black belt. You should dismantle me, but I'm picking a fight with you. Your rules. I'll come to you whenever you're ready." In a statement to ABC News, Austin police said detectives reviewed the post and observed that Johnson was traveling to Austin while continuing to make threatening statements. Detectives contacted Mr. Rogan, who stated he never had any interaction with Johnson and considered the post to be threatening. Based on this information, detectives obtained an arrest warrant for Johnson on the charge of terroristic threat. A video posted to Johnson's Instagram Tuesday evening shows his wife walking through a hotel discussing the arrest with another man before she encounters Johnson being placed into a police car. Johnson rose to fame through his supplement company and ancestral lifestyle. In 2022, he was the center of controversy after a series of leaked emails indicated he used steroids, which he previously adamantly denied. His rise and fall is the focus of a Netflix documentary, Untold: The Liver King. Rogan, a comedian, is widely known for his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, which has more than 2,340 episodes. In one 2023 episode, Rogan comments on Johnson's steroid use. Johnson has never been a guest on Rogan's podcast. Court records show Johnson was released on Wednesday on a $20,000 bond in order to have no contact with Rogan. His release conditions also include a mental health evaluation within 1 week and GPS monitoring. Following his release, Johnson posted another series of videos. In one video, Johnson stated that he was going to visit Austin's capital and asked that anyone with a last name Rogan stay at least 200 yards away from him so he wouldn't violate any orders. According to court documents cited by TMC, Rogan told police Johnson appears to be significantly unstable and seems like he needs help. Now, I have not listened to Joe Rogan's podcast. I've heard a number of things about it, but what I do know of Joe Rogan, he's also a play-by-play commentator for the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC. Joe Rogan is good at what he does on that realm. I've heard what he's done in comedy, and he's pretty good at that too. And I've heard what he's done for his with his podcast. That being said, threatening somebody, that's just not the right way to handle things. That's not the right way to handle business. If you're gonna threaten somebody, you gotta be careful that Big Brother, if you know what I mean, is not watching and is not listening. Unfortunately for the Liver King, he's got to find that out the hard way. Let's see. We have a verdict watch in the missing boyfriend murder trial, Florida versus Christopher Davis, and I am going to bring that to your attention right now. But before I get there, I want to hit the copyright disclaimer for starters. Yeah, that way I'm not going to get in trouble for this. And I am going to double down on that. Now we got the copyright disclaimer scrolling across the bottom of your screen. And now, here we go with the verdict in Florida versus Christopher Davis.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, there is a verdict in the missing boyfriend murder trial for Christopher Davis. The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 48 minutes before reaching its decision. Let's get inside that courtroom.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's my understanding you all have reached a verdict. Is that correct? All right. If you'll please hand the verdict form to the bailiff. The verdict form is filled out, signed, and dated. I will provide it to the clerk, and she will publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 20th Judicial Circuit in Lee County, Florida, criminal action. State of Florida versus Christopher Davis, case number 24 CF 000083. Verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the charge. Count 1, second-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of second-degree murder. Count 2, tampering with physical evidence. The defendant is guilty of tampering with physical evidence. Count 3, fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual target. The defendant is guilty of fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. Count 4, fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual, Publix. The defendant is guilty of fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. Count 5, fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual, PNC Bank. The defendant is guilty of fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. Count 6, fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual, Starbucks. The defendant is guilty of fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. Count 7, fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual, Walmart. The defendant is guilty of fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. Count 8, fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual, Seacoast Bank. The defendant is guilty of fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. Count 9, fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual, Home Depot. The defendant is guilty of fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. Count 10. Fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. And Therese Aesthetic Medicine. The defendant is guilty of fraudulent use of or possession with intent to fraudulently use personal identification information concerning a deceased individual. So say we all, dated June 26, 2025, foreperson.
Does either side wish to have the jury polled?
Please.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. My mic was off. Let me try this. Let me try this again. Christopher Davis is guilty of was convicted of all counts in the killing of Barry Schimmelbach, who went missing on July 2023. The body has not been found. And following the jury's verdict, Davis was sentenced to life in prison plus 45 years. After a year-long investigation into the victim's whereabouts, authorities announced charges against Davis, who was Schimmelbach's boyfriend at the time of his disappearance. According to police records, Schimmelbach's friends claimed he was planning to break up with Davis. He was last seen at Cruz's bar arguing with Davis before leaving. 40 life in prison plus 45 years. All he had to do basically was just end whatever relationship they had, and he wanted to end. Let it end, move onward. But instead, he made the choice. He ends up a defendant, a murder defendant. Now he's gonna spend the rest of his life behind bars. That's justice, folks. In an exclusive interview, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is breaking her silence now that her parole has been completed. In the role she had in her mother's death, and she's taking aim at her accomplice. The first picture you're looking at here. Oh. Picture you just saw was Gypsy Rose with her with her mom when she was younger. Here's everything you need to know before the article. As she completed her parole, Gypsy Rose Blanchard took to Instagram to reflect on her life and to offer one final apology for her role in the 2015 death of her mother, Dee Blanchard. This next chapter is one of healing, of growth, of reclaiming my life, Blanchard vowed. She also took aim at her ex, Nicholas Gojan, who was found guilty of first-degree murder in Dee Dee's death and is serving a life sentence for the charge. Now, before I begin, you guys can have all the opinions you want on Gypsy Rose. Me, I have no opinion on it. I'm just reporting on this. Gypsy Rose Blanchard has opened up about taking accountability and moving forward from her role in the death of her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard. The 33-year-old took to Instagram on Wednesday, June 25th, to share a lengthy post with the caption, "Breaking My Silence," as she completed parole after pleading guilty to second-degree murder charges related to the 2015 death of her mother. Blanchard was released from prison in December 2023 after serving 8 years of a 10-year sentence, and her parole ended June 24th, 2025. Here's Gypsy Rose now. "I've taken accountability," she says, "and now I take back my life. When I accepted my sentence, I accepted the weight of my choices. I served my time. That was my accountability, and I've carried it for years. I don't owe the past anything more," Blanchard wrote in the clip. She vowed that next chapter of her life would be one of healing, of growth, of reclaiming my life. "This is freedom, and I'm moving forward with clarity, peace, and self-forgiveness. The justice system has decided. The case is closed. This is justice for Dee Dee, as well as myself, who the system failed all my life," she wrote, adding, "Justice was served, and so was my time. My continued prayers go out to the Petrie family. I am deeply remorseful for the pain and heartbreak my actions caused them. I recognize that nothing I say can undo the trauma or bring Dee Dee back. But from the depths of my heart, I will continue to express my sincerest apologies to them, now and always." Blanchard also took aim at her ex-boyfriend Nicholas Goldjohn, who was sentenced to life in prison after being found guilty of first-degree murder in Dee Dee's death in 2018, and called him deeply disturbed. "Yes, he's a deeply disturbed man, but he also knew the difference between right and wrong. Regardless of my role of unintentional manipulation, Nicholas made the decision to move forward with that night. That was a choice, and he is not exempt from the consequences of that choice." In 2015, Goldjohn stabbed Dee Dee to death while Blanchard, whom he was then dating, hid in a bathroom. His attorneys had argued that he was manipulated by Blanchard, a victim of Munchausen by proxy, to kill her mom, and should have his charges reduced to second-degree murder, according to the Springfield News Leader. Blanchard was put in a wheelchair despite being able to walk, forced to take medication she didn't need, and had her head shaved in an effort to convince loved ones and the community that she was suffering from muscular dystrophy, leukemia, and other ailments. His diagnosis of autism and Asperger's does not excuse what he did. Mental health is complex, but accountability matters, and no one is above the law. His fate was decided by a panel of judges, prosecutors, lawyers, and 12 jury members who reviewed the same evidence circulating online. His efforts of appeals have all been unsuccessful, each court agreeing with the original conviction, Blanchard continued. "I will not carry his actions on my shoulders any longer. I've taken responsibility for mine," she declared. During his trial, 2 Springfield psychologists told the court they had diagnosed Goldjohn with autism, per the Springfield News Leader. While Dr. Kent Franks, who testified in Goldjohn's defense, concluded Goldjohn has autism spectrum disorder level 2, requiring substantial support with accompanying intellectual impairment. Robert Denny, who prosecutors called as a rebuttal witness, said after an examination he had diagnosed Goldjohn with autism spectrum disorder level 1. Goldjohn is currently serving his sentence at the Potosi Correctional Center in Missouri, per the Springfield News Leader. In August 2022, he appeared in a Greene County courtroom asking to set aside his previous conviction and order a new trial on the grounds that he had ineffective counsel in his trial, according to the Spring News Leader. The following year, in March 2023, his motion to vacate, set aside, or correct judgment and sentence was denied, according to local media outlet KY3. Here's Gypsy Rose Blanchard with blonde hair back then, and this is Nicholas Goldjohn. Blanchard also accused Gojan of a disturbing pattern targeting vulnerable women with past trauma and pulling them into his twisted fantasy world. He presents himself as a dominant figure, seeking control and obedience, manipulating these women under the guise of love and loyalty, she claimed. She described an alleged relationship that Gojan had with a woman named Dawn Boker while he had been in prison. Blanchard claimed that they started as pen pals before their relationship turned romantic and dark. Thankfully, like others who came after her, Dawn eventually found the strength to walk away to save herself before she lost her identity, like I once did. She wrote, saying, "This isn't new behavior from Gojan. He is a man on a relentless search for his perfect submissive, someone to carry out his darkest desires, even from behind bars," she believes. But the truth is, more and more women are seeing through the mask and choosing to escape. They're not his victims, they're survivors. And here's that photo again of Dee and Gypsy Rose. Blanchard then shared a string of alleged messages between Dawn and Gojan, which he said were being shared with Dawn's permission. In one alleged message sent in 2019, Gojan told Dawn that he had regret that she met his alter ego Nikolai, saying that he directed the raid towards you of all people. People has reached out to an attorney for Gojan for comment. Now the parole is over, Blanchard said that she continues to think of Dee Dee's family. The reality star went on to thank everyone who had supported her, as well as her doubters and naysayers. "Because you lit a fire in me, you gave me the drive to prove you wrong. And guess what? I did," she wrote. "Against the odds, against the noise, I stood strong. I stayed true. I kept pushing forward, and now I'm just getting started." She added, "You said I'd fail, but instead I'm rising. I'm about to show you what living my best life really looks like. And all you can do now is watch me." Blanchard signed off with the following hashtags: "Still standing," "Unstoppable," "Watch me rise." Speaking to People magazine in 2023, Blanchard revealed that she is not allowed to any contact with Gojan, saying that she didn't want it anyway. "I feel responsible for putting him in this situation. However, the axe to commit murder was on him as well. I mean, everybody has a choice. And he went through with this, so he's paying his sentence. I paid mine, and that's my thoughts on it." People reached out to Gojan's lawyer and Dawn for comment, but did not immediately hear back. Honestly, though, I have to agree with Gypsy Rose. Everybody has a choice, and like I said earlier, sometimes your choices can make you either a victim or a defendant. It all depends on the choices you make. And now this public service announcement: if you suspect child abuse, you are encouraged, not just asked, you are encouraged to call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline. That number is 1-800-4A-CHILD, 1-800-422-4453, or go to www.childhelp.org. All calls are toll-free and confidential, and the hotline is available 24/7 in more than 170 languages. No child deserves to be abused. If you see a child being abused in any way possible, childhelp.org or call 1-800-4A-CHILD. Next up, the Friday docket is a recap No, no, I won't do the recaps of the Preppy Party murder trial because we'll be going through different videos, and we won't may not have all the time for that. I mentioned Bryan Kohberger's request to delay trial. That was rejected. Here we go. An ex-Marine is accused in the girlfriend's strangulation death, and now he wants the case dismissed. San Diego. A former Marine accused of killing his girlfriend during rough sex is seeking to have his case dismissed. 41-year-old Raymond McLeod is charged in the 2016 death of 30-year-old Crystal Mitchell. Her body was found inside a friend's home. Mitchell had been strangled to death. McLeod fled the country immediately after Mitchell's death. It was captured in El Salvador in August of 2022. McLeod does not dispute he caused Mitchell's death. However, his lawyers claim McLeod unintentionally strangled Mitchell to death during rough consensual sex that included erotic asphyxiation, or what's referred to as sexual choking. Last year, San Diego Superior Court Judge Kimberly Legata ordered McLeod to stand trial following a 3-day preliminary hearing that featured notable figures Dr. Drew Pinsky and Dr. Michael Baden testifying as experts in support of McLeod's claim that Mitchell's death was an accident. In April, McLeod's defense filed a non-statutory motion to dismiss, claiming prosecutors failed to disclose over 2,000 pages of discovery, which conclusively established that the couple were deeply in love, engaged in consensual, rough sex practices on a routine basis, which resulted in the tragic but accidental death of Crystal Mitchell. According to a June defense filing, prosecutors responded and acknowledged their failure to provide the cell phone records and admit they were favorable to the defense, claiming it was an inadvertent mistake. In their filing, the defense details text messages from Mitchell's cell phone that include their graphic sexual experiences, bruising on Ms. Mitchell's body from rough sex with Mr. McLeod, dominant and submissive sexual memes, and BDSM-related imagery. The defense also argues the contents show the affectionate nature of the relationship. The filing also states that evidence not only existed, but it had been in the possession of the district attorney for nearly a decade. It was not disclosed to the defense, they argued. They argued withholding the evidence hindered the defense experts who testified at McLeod's preliminary hearing. A judge heard arguments on this past Friday, and when the information regarding that comes in, I will be sure to bring that to you. But even this case is way too much information, and probably too much information to even be allowed in a courtroom setting. Next up, a little closure for Alec Baldwin. The Rust Crew settles lawsuit against film producers and Alec Baldwin himself. Santa Fe, New Mexico, a settlement has been reached in a civil lawsuit alleging negligence in the fatal shooting of a cinematographer on the set of the Western movie Rust, according to the court documents released on Friday. The lawsuit was brought by 3 Rust crew members seeking compensation for emotional distress from producers of Rust, including Alec Baldwin, as co-producer and lead actor. The civil suit accused producers of failing to follow industry safety rules, allegations they denied. Terms of the settlement were not available. Attorneys for Rust producers and the plaintiffs could not immediately be reached by phone or email. Plaintiffs to the lawsuit included Ross Adiego, a frontline crew member who witnessed at close range the fatal shooting of Helena Hutchins at close during a rehearsal on October 2021, on a Filmstead ranch on the outskirts of Santa Fe. A charge of involuntary manslaughter against Baldwin was dismissed at trial last year on allegations that police and prosecutors withheld evidence from the defense. Separately, Rust armorer Hannah Gutierrez Reed was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and completed an 18-month sentence in May. Prosecutors accused Gutierrez Reed of unwittingly bringing live ammunition on set and failing to follow basic gun safety protocols. Baldwin was pointing a gun at Hutchins during a rehearsal on a movie set outside Santa Fe when the revolver went off, killing Hutchins and wounding director Joel Souza. And Diego testified at Gutierrez Reed's trial and appeared before the grand jury that indicted Baldwin. The filming of Rust was completed in Montana. The Western was released in theaters in May. Again, we don't know what we don't know how much the settlement was for, but now, as I just said moments ago before this article, maybe now with the whole thing is settled, now maybe Alec Baldwin can have some closure, as well as Hannah Gutierrez Reed, and this thing is finally put to bed. And finally, before we get to Diddy, and a little bit of an update on the Sheriff Mickey Stein's case. He appears paranoid in the video after the judge's murder, crying, "Don't kill me." Whitesburg, Kentucky. Newly worn body camera video offers new insight into the minutes after a Kentucky sheriff allegedly murdered a judge in his chambers. Sean Mickey Steins was the Letcher County sheriff on September 19, 2024, when he allegedly shot Judge Kevin Mullins to death in the courthouse. Steins resigned from his position as sheriff one day before his first court appearance. There is a disturbing video from inside the judge's chambers showing Steins appearing to shoot Mullins multiple times being played out in court. Now, body cam video from one of the first responders at the scene shows Steins in the 2 hours after the shooting, first being questioned by police at the courthouse, then being transferred to the Leslie County Jail. Steins is seated and handcuffed in a hallway when the officer, who makes it clear in conversation that he has known Steins for a long time, arrives. The officer immediately asks Steins, "Are you okay?" Steins nods but immediately becomes concerned when he's told that he will not be taken to the Letcher County Jail. The officers try to explain to Steins that taking him to another county is for his own safety. "I'm alive and well. No weapons on me," Steins replies. "If I leave this building, I won't draw another breath." Steins repeats that he doesn't feel safe and doesn't want to be taken out of the building. Each officer emphatically repeats that nobody will hurt him, but Steins requests to remain in the courthouse. "They will put me in a single cell," he says. "I've seen it done with officials in the past who've committed crimes. But I can be in protective custody down there in a single cell out front." While Steins is responsive to the officers laughing and joking about restaurants and their shared history, he stops speaking or reacting at all when asked about the shooting or his family. Officer asks, "I'll be honest, Mickey, you don't seem like you normally seem when I speak with you." Steins says, "Well, I'm in handcuffs." "Not just that," the officer says. Steins, "I just want y'all to be fair to me." Officer, "Tell me about your day." Steins, "It was fine." Officer, "Why were you at the courthouse?" Steins, "For court. I come over here all the time. We had lunch together at Streetside." Officer, "Who did?" Steins, "Several people." Officer, "Who all had lunch?" Stein stops responding, staring down the hallway as the officer continues to ask who he ate with or what he even ate at the restaurant. Judge Mullins had also been seen eating at street side with others the day of the murder, sitting silently when questioned. Steins just stares blankly past the officers. After a pause, Steins repeats, "Just be fair to me. Don't kill me. Don't stab me. Don't torture me. Nothing like that." At one point, Steins asked to see his wife and daughter, and when told that's not possible until he's at a jail facility, he says in a sing-song voice, "I don't know why I can see the people I used to see." After exhausting their efforts to speak to Steins, officers lead him to a waiting car to take him to the Leslie County Jail. Steins balks at taking an elevator or even walking into the stairwell, seemingly scared that someone is waiting for him. Once in the sally port, Steins refuses to get into the car until officers open the trunk to assure him that it's empty. Steins has pleaded not guilty to murder charges and has indicated through his attorney that he plans to present an insanity defense at trial. And for those who plan on following this on Court TV, my main man, 50 Grand Vinny Politan, will take a deep dive into the case and the new video on the next episode of Vinny Politan Investigates at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. After everything I just read in that, it could very well be that Sean Mickey Steins now has regrets doing what he did. I mean, shooting a judge in cold blood multiple times. I guess we'll have to find. I guess we'll see what happens when this case continues forward. Now we get to the portion that I've been waiting to get to. We're talking about the closing arguments in the Diddy sex trafficking trial. There's so much to unpack in this one. In fact, I'm gonna start this off with this video. Here's the once again is the copyright disclaimer, and you see the copyright disclaimer scrolling on the bottom of your screen as well. Let's go to Court TV.
Even after the fact, when she would come to initially pay me when the situation was over, everything seemed like she was in a good-natured, good headspace, and I didn't get any cues that there was possibly distress or some type of thing she was going through that might have been a negative experience. I honestly, in the moment, it just felt like this was a couple that were trying to explore certain kinks and fetishes, and I was just somebody there to try to provide the fantasy or help them create the fantasy.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for following along with us. That was the so-called Punisher escort who took the stand in this case. He was speaking with our own Vinny Politan last night about his experience participating in what has been called in this trial freak-offs, hotel freak-offs with Sean Diddy Combs and his then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura. And from the sounds of it, Ventura was coherent and a willing participant, a stark contrast to the government's theory that Combs used. And there's an allegation that there were drugs and violence used to support this sexual encounter. We didn't hear that from that particular witness, but let's talk about what we are hearing right now, because the defense is giving their closing argument inside of that federal courthouse. There are no cameras, but we are getting notes as far as what is happening inside. And to discuss what we are hearing, let's bring in our guest who is watching along with us. National Trial Attorney Michael Jaffer is here. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to list a couple of things that we're hearing about inside of the courtroom, because it's Mark Agnifilo who is delivering these remarks. And he's telling this jury that this was the prosecution's attempt to criminalize kinky sexual preferences and drug use, that the bedroom, the intimate part of this defendant's life, is what is being criminalized here, that it's not racketeering. He says witnesses have been taking the stand and none of them have said, yes, I am part of a racketeering enterprise. He talks about this being a lifestyle, swingers, threesomes, but essentially it's being described as him mocking the government for an exaggerated trial. How do you think that is likely going over with these jurors?
I mean, that's a defense they have to take, but I'm baffled as to why they didn't bring any witnesses, or at least Sean Combs, to the stand to say that, right? Because here's the thing. I said in the middle of this trial that whenever you are going to try a case, if you perceive there to be a weakness in your case, you lean hard into the strength of your case. So I say that for the government, because the government knew before the trial started that they knew that the weakness in their case was the word coercion, right? How are they going to get the jury to believe that Sean Combs coerced these people, committed had a criminal sexual enterprise and racketeered his way to the top, right? How are they going to do that? They leaned hard into the strong side of their case, which is the grossness and the sheer depravity of his conduct. They put on witness after witness, weeks of witnesses who just showed you that Sean Combs had a depraved lifestyle. They did that because they were hoping it would distract the jury when they went to the jury deliberation room on the word coercion. They wanted them to get to the word coercion by looking at the sheer grossness of his conduct and say no rational person would ever believe they were stepping into that situation. When they stepped into a situation, a relationship with Sean Combs, they never thought that he would use money as a hook for them to be part of this, and then he controlled them. So I think it's going good, Julia. It just baffles me that these very competent, capable attorneys didn't put on any witnesses. I mean, Sean Combs is a trained actor. He's acted in plays. He knows how to cry on cue, how to emote on cue. He knows how to do things that I can't do, most people can't do. So he would have been a perfect witness to carry that flag before the closing argument, because that would have been the last thing the jury heard before they heard closing arguments. We would have seen Sean Combs on the stand cry, beg, plead. I love these people. I would have never done that, because the way they're explaining it, it's rational in a vacuum. But the jury are not going to deliberate in a vacuum. They just saw weeks of really disgusting, grotesque evidence put on by the federal government. So we'll see what happens.
Interesting opinion that you think he should have taken the stand in his own defense. Let's actually stand by, Michael. We understand that we have Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. She just made it out of the courthouse and is live there on the ground in New York. Final day of closing arguments. The defense is up. Kelly Craft, what can you tell us?
Well, good afternoon to you, Julia. So, yes, I just made my way outside the federal courthouse because listening to the closing arguments by defense counsel obviously is always riveting. The closing arguments are so critical to cases, especially a case like this, where you have to have both sides really weaving together a story, a narrative as to how they want the jurors to look at the evidence. So, of course, yesterday we heard from the federal prosecutors. Today, defense counsel got underway just about 9 o'clock this morning. He is still going. There was a short break earlier, and we're hearing that the lunch break might happen in about 10 to 15 minutes. But when I just made my way outside of the federal courthouse, what Mark Agnifilo was talking about was that situation where Cassie Ventura had testified on the stand that Sean Diddy Combs had raped her. And really what Mark is doing is he's kind of brushing away all of these allegations, saying that, okay, really what happened here is Cassie was with her then boyfriend, who she's now married to, and he saw a text. So all of a sudden her story was going sideways. So she needed to come up with a reason as to why she was with Sean Diddy Combs. So she claimed that he raped her. This is, of course, defense counsel saying this in his closing argument right now. Then what he was doing is bringing up some evidence of a text that the prosecutors used yesterday from Sean Diddy Combs, which was in August, in which the prosecutors were saying this is a confession of that rape. And Mark Agnifilo brought that text up and said nowhere in here could anyone indicate that this would be a confession to a rape of any sort from any sort of the imagination. What it is him just saying, I wasn't able to turn you on, etc. He said, how could anyone get in there, get from that was a confession of a rape? So basically what he's doing, Julia, so far to the jurors is just trying to tear apart the credibility of Cassie Ventura and their relationship.
Wow, Kelly, you are taking us there. Even though we don't have cameras, I'm so thankful that we have you to describe what's going on in there. Can you talk about what has been said that may be considered mocking or belittling of not only the government's case, but the agents who went in and did this raid? We've been hearing some reports that Mark Agnifilo has been doing that in a pretty strategic way.
He really has, Julie. And I know we made some full screens we can put up for people because, again, federal court, so no cameras inside the courtroom. But he's really just phrasing this and putting this as not even really acknowledging a lot of the charges, just telling his own narrative, just brushing away those allegations. So he accused the prosecutors of using the racketeering count to criminalize Combs' kinky sexual preferences as well as drug use. Agnifilo said the jury heard two trials, one as told by the evidence about a lifestyle of swingers and threesomes, and the other an exaggerated trial as told by the government. And they said this right in the beginning, Julia. There is no charge here of domestic violence. Even Mark was just saying it as I walked out of the courtroom. No charge of rape. But look at these other charges that they're bringing forth. He also described Combs as a pioneering self-made black entrepreneur who championed diversity, equity, as well as inclusion. He said the employees loved him, even the ones who are suing him. And Julia, we heard that repeatedly on the stand throughout this case. Did they always like him? Mark Agnifilo said to the jury. No, but they loved him. They didn't want to leave him. And of course, Julia, that's one of the things the defense counsel is really hammering on with the jurors, because we saw time after time each witness that got up there talking about how they really loved him. They admired Sean Diddy Combs, even the women who are accusing him of the extreme violence, talking about still being in love with him, loving him. So that's what the defense counsel is using.
Oh, yeah, Kelly, I'll never forget you're telling us about Jane hugging both sides and still living in a house that is paid for by the defendant. Thank you so much for that update. I know you've got to get back in to listen to more of those closings. We'll check in with you later on in the day. And also keep in mind, everyone, 7 p.m. Eastern today, Julie Grant and Kelly Craft, they're both going to be hosting a special hour recapping the sex trafficking trial and everything that you missed today from inside of that federal courthouse as the jury moves closer to getting the case. So you don't want to miss that 7 p.m. Eastern, a special hour here at Court TV.
First, a quick update on the case against Sean Diddy Combs, the federal sex trafficking case in week number 6. The jury back at it today after a jury was sick yesterday, and then, of course, they had the Juneteenth holiday. Those delays have thrown a bit of a wrench into the timeline, meaning the government's case will likely not rest today as first thought. That'll likely happen Monday after the final witness, a Combs former employee, Brendan Paul, finishes his testimony. Remember, he was taken into custody after that search of Sean Combs' mansion in Miami. He took the stand this morning and has said his mission was to make sure Combs was always happy. He said Combs told his assistants they should operate like SEAL Team 6. Paul also told the jury he typically worked between 80 and 100 hours a week trying to make Sean Combs happy. He'll continue to testify for the government. And, of course, there'll be cross-examination of him as well. John Day's still with us. He's in Santa Fe, New Mexico, trial attorney. This is a federal RICO case. How are they doing? The feds, they have shocked the jury, I'm sure, with all of the details of the lifestyle that was being led by Sean Combs. But what about the racketeering portion of it?
Right. I mean, this is one of the issues: is has the government been able to prove using RICO, which was designed for, organized crime prosecutions, have they been able to prove to the jurors at this point that a organized crime statute is applied to the music business? Basically, the jurors have had this tsunami of evidence, horrible testimony regarding Diddy. And so now, what they're waiting for is they're waiting for the defense to say, okay, here's how we explain this away. I mean, it's been weeks and weeks and weeks of that testimony on the government side. The jurors have been overwhelmed, I'm sure, and now they're waiting for the defense to say, okay, here's what this actually means from our perspective.
Yeah, and you feel it in the cross-examination of these witnesses that they were willing participants in this strange lifestyle, but you knew what you were getting into. You were part of this sort of making Sean happy mentality, which we're seeing again today with this witness on the stand. John Day, thank you as always for your time.
And so at this point, it's all basically now down to the jury, who will get the case on Monday, and they'll start the deliberations then. Which now brings me to my closing argument. In the courtroom of United States versus Sean Combs, the prosecution painted a kingdom, a gilded empire built not just on wealth and celebrity, but on domination. Everyone was there to serve him, said U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic, and in that kingdom, saying no was not an option. This was no ordinary trial. It asked us to confront the uncomfortable, how far charisma can stretch before it chokes, how power can wear the mask of pleasure, and how silence can be the loudest accomplice of all. Then came the rebuttal, the defense swaggering in its dismissal, casting the entire trial as a spectacle. This isn't about crime, it's about money, Attorney Mark Agnifilo declared, accusing the government of confusing kink with criminality. And when they rested, the gallery exploded, not in sorrow, not in shock, but in cheers. What happened in that courtroom reflects a deeper fracture. We live in an age where justice is often filtered through entertainment, and the line between what is salacious and what is serious blurs until we forget how to see either clearly. So as deliberations are set to begin on Monday, let me say this. The jury will debate the facts, the law, and the lives shaped by Diddy's orbit. But for the rest of us, the court of public opinion, we're already deliberating something bigger. Not just whether fame protects, not just whether wealth bends the truth, but whether our culture is still capable of naming abuse when it's surrounded by applause. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Bethea'S Byte. And it's reloaded. I want to thank you all for joining me here on this Sunday evening. Glad to spend another Sunday with you all, and let's do this again. Let's do this again come next week. I pray I'll be able to do this again with you. Same time, same place next week. Until then, you guys know exactly what you do, right? Bite this.
Thank you all for joining me here at the Drama-Free True Crime Destination. Be sure to follow Bethea'S Byte Reloaded all over social media and get your coverage of true crime news with no gimmicks, no drama, and no BS. This is Bethea'S Byte, and it's reloaded.